What was about to be discovered under the shadows of dawn in Newport Beach would forever change the destiny of two souls destined to collide. While buried secrets threatened to crumble the fragile world that Sarah had endured for years, one question echoed. Could a brown-eyed woman, marked by abuse and despair, find redemption in the arms of a millionaire businessman whose blue eyes hid their own ghosts? Between the cobblestone streets and opulent mansions of Newport Beach, where the whispers of high society contrasted with the silenced screams of the marginalized, Michael Thompson observed from the heights of his financial empire the young waitress who served coffee with trembling hands, never imagining that she held truths that would resonate with his own wounds. The family conspiracy that had stolen Sarah's dignity would intertwine with Michael's power and privileges, creating a dangerous dance between two seemingly irreconcilable worlds. One of luxury and abundance, another of daily survival, perhaps under the same starry sky of Newport Beach, which had witnessed centuries of fortunes and miseries. The true value did not reside in bank accounts or surnames, but in the capacity of the human heart to transform pain into true love. The pain shot through her cheek like lightning when Ernest's hand struck her face. The blow made her stagger, but she didn't fall. She had learned to maintain balance after so many years of abuse. "I told you that you couldn't refuse him. Do you know how much money we lost because of your stupidity?" Her uncle's voice echoed in the small room of the house near Huntington Beach. Ernest's dark eyes gleamed with fury as he pointed to the door through which that night's guest had just left. Sarah Wilson remained silent, her gaze fixed on the ceramic floor. Her intense brown eyes, inherited from a mother she barely remembered, filled with tears she refused to shed. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. "Mr. Moore is one of the most important men in the region," intervened Connie, her aunt, crossing her arms over her chest. "He could have given us $30,000 for one night with you. 30,000, and you ruin everything because, according to you, he touched you inappropriately." Sarah clenched her fists. "He put his hand under my skirt while I was serving a mojito. I wasn't going to allow that." Ernest approached again, threatening. "And who do you think you are to not allow anything? Do you forget that we took you off the street when your parents died? We gave you shelter, food, education, and this is how you repay us?" The 26-year-old young woman looked discreetly toward the door, evaluating her options. She had nowhere to go, no money, no true friends, no family that wanted her. Her uncles had made sure to isolate her completely. "Tomorrow, another man will come," Connie sentenced coldly. "And you better do what you're told this time. We can't keep supporting you for free." "I'm not a prostitute," Sarah murmured, feeling each word burn her throat. The second blow caught her by surprise. This time Ernest grabbed her by the hair, forcing her to look at him. "You are what we say you are, and if tomorrow you don't please Dr. Rodriguez, I swear you'll regret it." In the mansion at Laguna Beach, on the other side of the city, Michael Thompson contemplated Newport Beach from his office window. At 33, he had become one of Brazil's most successful businessmen, although few knew his face. He preferred to maintain a low profile, away from the press and social events. His deep blue eyes reflected the moonlight as he took a sip of whiskey. The meeting with businessman Robert Moore had left him uneasy, not because of business, those were going perfectly, but because of the brief scene he had witnessed at the restaurant. "Michael, you have to meet this young lady," Moore had said between laughs. "Her uncles bring her to these meetings for a reasonable amount. You could spend an unforgettable night." The idea had disgusted him, but what really disturbed him was seeing the young woman sitting at that table with a lost look, while a middle-aged man placed his hand on hers. The discomfort on her face was evident, and something in her brown eyes reflected a sadness so deep that it was impossible for him to ignore. "Sir, Attorney Miller is on the line," announced Peter, his personal assistant, interrupting his thoughts. Michael nodded, returning to reality. Tell him I'll call him in 5 years. Minutes. When Peter left, Michael looked back at the city. He couldn't get the image of that young woman out of his mind. On impulse, he had followed Moore to the restaurant bathroom and warned him to stay away from her. The discussion almost ended in aggression, but his position and power were sufficient to intimidate the businessman. What he didn't know was that the young woman had escaped during that confrontation, and that their paths would cross again much sooner than he imagined. The rain fell heavily on the cobblestone streets of Newport Beach when Sarah ran out of the restaurant. She didn't have an umbrella, and her dress, the only elegant one they allowed her to wear for these occasions, was soaked in seconds. She didn't care. She just wanted to get as far away as possible. Her heels echoed against the stones as she ran without a fixed destination. She knew that returning home would mean facing her uncle's fury, but she needed these moments of freedom, even if they were brief and painful. She stopped under the awning of a closed store, trying to catch her breath, tears mixed with rain on her face. How had she reached this point? Her parents, John and Lucy Wilson, had been university professors, honorable and loving people. When they died in that car accident 15 years ago, Sarah, only 11 years old, was left in the care of her maternal uncles. At first they seemed kind and understanding, but over time their true nature was revealed. The first introductions with men began when she turned 20. "They're just arranged meetings," they said, "men of good position who might marry you." The reality was much darker. A black car stopped in front of her, interrupting her thoughts. The window slowly rolled down, revealing a man she immediately recognized. It was the same one who had intervened at the restaurant when Moore had harassed her. "Need help?" he asked with a deep but gentle voice. "You're soaked, and the storm is getting worse." Sarah instinctively stepped back. Experience had taught her to be suspicious, especially of well-dressed men who offered help. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied dryly, hugging herself to fight the cold. The man observed her with his penetrating blue eyes. "I saw you at the restaurant. I know what Moore was trying to do." She paled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "My name is Michael Thompson," he continued, ignoring her denial. "Can I take you wherever you need to go? No conditions, I promise." Sarah hesitated. The rain was increasing, and she was beginning to feel her body shake uncontrollably. She looked around. The streets were deserted, and the last bus had passed hours ago. Just take me to the bus stop on Main Street," she said finally. Michael nodded and opened the back door of the car so she could enter without having to sit next to him. This small gesture of respect didn't go unnoticed by Sarah. The journey passed in silence. She watched the city through the fogged window, wondering what price this unexpected help would really have. Everyone always wanted something in return. "May I ask something?" Michael broke the silence. "Did you like this story? Tell us in the comments which moment moved you the most. Subscribe to the channel to follow other real stories of overcoming, courage, and love. At the end of this video, click on the next recommended story. You won't want to miss it." Sarah tensed. "It depends. Why do you continue with those people? It's visible that they mistreat you." The direct question, without beating around the bush, caught her by surprise. Normally, the men she met through her uncles weren't interested in her well-being. "I have no alternatives," she answered honestly. "I have nowhere to go, and no money to support myself." Michael nodded, as if he had confirmed something he already suspected. "I understand, but we all deserve a dignified life." When they reached the stop, the rain had diminished. Sarah hurried to get out, but before closing the door, Michael handed her a card. "If you ever need real help, call me. My personal number is there." Sarah took the card out of courtesy, doubting she would ever use it. She had already received similar offers that always ended up being traps. "Thank you for the ride," she said, and closed the door without looking back. Michael watched as she walked away in the rain, shoulders curved, as if carrying the weight of the world. Something about her awakened a protective instinct he hadn't felt in years. He had seen too much suffering in his life to ignore someone in distress. Sarah's uncle's apartment was in a deteriorated building in one of the outskirts of Huntington Beach, a place where dreams went to die, as she used to think. Small, poorly ventilated, and always with a musty smell that permeated the clothes. It was 5 in the morning when Sarah got up, like every day, to prepare her uncle's breakfast. She worked as a waitress at a diner in downtown Newport Beach, but first she had to leave the house spotless and the food ready. Any mistake meant reproaches, and on the worst days, beatings. While heating the bagels, a sudden dizziness forced her to hold onto the edge of the stove. There had been days when she felt sick, morning nausea, extreme fatigue, sensitivity to certain smells. Deep down she knew what it meant, but she refused to accept it. "You look terrible," commented Connie upon entering the kitchen, her eternally bitter face contorted in a grimace of disgust. "Are you sick? Because we're not paying for doctors." Sarah shook her head. "I'm fine, Aunt, just a little tired." "You better be. Remember that Dr. Rodriguez is coming today. This time you can't ruin everything." A shiver ran down her spine. She had forgotten about that meeting. After the incident with Moore, her uncles were more determined than ever to profit from her. "Aunt, please," she began. But Connie's warning look silenced her. "We already talked about this. Either you cooperate or find somewhere to live." The Beach Cafe was one of those typical Newport Beach places that attracted both tourists and locals. Located near Main Street, it had a varied clientele, from college students to businessmen in informal meetings. Sarah had worked there for 2 years. The owner, Mr. Johnson, was an older man who treated her with respect, although he knew little about her personal situation. Her salary was modest, and her uncles kept most of it, leaving her only enough for transportation. "Good morning, Sarah," Mr. Johnson greeted when she entered. "How do you feel today? Yesterday you were a bit pale." She forced a smile while putting on her apron. "I'm better, thank you for asking." The morning went slowly. Sarah attended the tables mechanically, her mind divided between worry about her possible pregnancy and fear of the meeting with Dr. Rodriguez that night. In a moment of calm, she allowed herself to look at the card she had kept in her apron pocket. Michael Thompson, General, Director, Thompson Group. The paper was thick and elegant, with a phone number written by hand on the back. Would he really be different from the other men she had met? "Miss, could you serve us?" The voice pulled her from her thoughts. She turned to find a newly occupied table, and then her heart skipped a beat. There, dressed in an impeccable grey suit, was Michael Thompson, accompanied by another serious-looking man. She approached cautiously, feeling her legs tremble slightly. "Good morning. What would you like?" she asked, avoiding eye contact with Michael. "A coffee with cream and a Danish for me," replied the companion without looking up from some documents. "For me, a double espresso, please," said Michael, his voice calm and deep. "How are you today, Sarah?" The fact that he remembered her name surprised her. "Fine, thank you," she replied briefly, before withdrawing to prepare the order. From the counter, she could feel Michael's gaze following her. It wasn't an invasive look. Like that of so many other men, there was something different, a kind of genuine concern that disconcerted her. When she returned with the order, Michael's companion was on the phone, which gave them a moment alone. "Did you manage to get home safely last night?" he asked in a low voice. Sarah nodded while placing the cups. "Yes, thank you for the ride." "Those men are your family?" She hesitated. "My uncles raised me since my parents died." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. If you need anything—" "More sugar, sir," she interrupted him, aware that Mr. Johnson was beginning to watch them with curiosity. Michael caught the signal. "No, it's fine like this, thank you." The rest of the interaction was brief and professional. When they finished and asked for the check, Michael left a generous tip and another card. this time with a handwritten note. The offer still stands. Any day, any time. Sarah kept the card with the first one, feeling a mixture of hope and fear. Life had taught her that selfless kindness rarely existed. When her shift ended, she discreetly bought a pregnancy test at a pharmacy far from her usual route. She couldn't continue avoiding the truth, no matter how painful it was. The small bathroom at the diner was a silent witness to how her life changed forever. 2 pink lines. Positive. She was pregnant. She slid to the floor, hugging her knees while tears flowed freely down her face. Whose was it? She had only been with one man in recent months. James Martinez, a supposed suitor her uncles had presented as a good catch. The meeting had ended in a hotel room where, despite her protests, he had taken what he wanted. She never reported him. Who would believe her? Besides, her uncles had received a generous gift for the meeting. Now she was pregnant and completely alone. If her uncles found out, the situation would only get worse. They would want to sell the baby or use it for some perverse scheme. With trembling hands, she took out Michael's card. Could she trust him? What alternatives did she have? The sound of her phone startled her. It was a message from her uncle. Don't forget, 8 p.m. Dress well. She put the pregnancy test in her bag and stood up, drying her tears. She needed time to think, to plan. For now, she had to survive another night. What she didn't know was that Michael Thompson had noticed her pallor and the way her hands trembled when serving coffee. And Michael wasn't a man who ignored signs of someone in trouble. That afternoon, while Sarah walked to the bus stop, a black car stopped beside her. The window rolled down, revealing Michael's now familiar face. "Allow me to take you," he offered. It wasn't a question, but a calm yet firm declaration. Sarah hesitated only a moment before getting in. This time she sat in the front seat. "Where are we going?" she asked, noticing they were taking a different direction from her house. "To a place where we can talk quietly," Michael replied. "There's something I want to propose to you, and I believe it could help you." The restaurant was discreet and elegant, located in a residential area of the city, a place where no one would recognize her or inform her uncles. Once seated at a private table, Michael went straight to the point. "I know you're in trouble, Sarah. I don't intend to know all the details, but I can see that you live in an unsustainable situation." She lowered her gaze, nervously playing with the napkin. "I don't know what you want from me, Mr. Thompson." "Michael, please," he corrected gently, "and I don't want anything from you. I want to offer you a way out." For the first time, Sarah raised her gaze to meet those intense blue eyes. "What kind of way out?" "A real job, a safe place to live, away from those people who exploit you." The words seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do something like that for me? You don't even know me." Michael remained silent for a moment, as if carefully considering his response. "Because many years ago I knew someone in a similar situation. I couldn't help then, and it's something that has haunted me ever since." There was a sincerity in his voice that was hard to fake. Still, Sarah had learned to be cautious. "I appreciate your offer, but I can't accept it," she said finally. "I have commitments tonight." Michael nodded slowly. "I understand, but the offer will remain standing tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and when you're ready." While they ate in relatively comfortable silence, Sarah felt something inside her beginning to change. For the first time in years, she glimpsed a possibility of escape. "I'm pregnant," she said suddenly, surprising herself with the confession. Michael showed no surprise or disgust. He simply nodded. "All the more reason you should consider my offer. A child deserves to grow up in a safe environment." The tears she had been holding back began to fall. "I can't go back tonight. My uncle, there's a man, and if I refuse..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Michael put down his fork and discreetly called the waiter to ask for the check. "You won't go back there," he declared firmly. Not tonight and never again. And so, in a quiet restaurant in Newport Beach, Sarah Wilson made the decision that would change the course of her life and that of her unborn child. The Thompson residence at Laguna Beach was an impressive contemporary construction with extensive gardens and a privileged view of the sea. For Sarah, who had spent the last 15 years in small and neglected spaces, entering there was like stepping into another world. "You'll stay in the guest wing," Michael explained while guiding her through the marble corridors. "You'll have all the privacy you need." A kind-looking woman waited for them in what would be Sarah's room, a spacious and bright space with a king-size bed, private bathroom, and a small balcony overlooking the garden. "This is Mrs. Rose, the housekeeper," Michael introduced. "Anything you need, you can ask her." Sarah, still impressed by the events, could barely articulate a greeting. Everything had happened so fast. In a matter of hours, she had gone from total despair to being in a mansion under the protection of a man she barely knew. "I'll leave you to rest," said Michael, heading toward the door. "Tomorrow we'll talk more calmly about your situation." When she was alone, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, unable to believe what was happening. Was it real, or would she wake up soon in her uncomfortable bed, ready for another day of abuse and exploitation? Her phone vibrated. 10 missed calls and several threatening messages from her uncle. The initial terror gave way to an unexpected determination. She wouldn't go back. No matter what happened, she couldn't subject her unborn child to that life. She turned off the phone and, for the first time in years, allowed herself to breathe deeply. The next morning, Sarah woke to a gentle knock on her door. Mrs. Rose entered with a breakfast tray. "Mr. Michael thought you might prefer to have breakfast in your room today," said the woman with a warm smile. "When you're ready, he's waiting for you in the office." Sarah had never had breakfast in bed. The simple act of eating calmly, without haste or fears, seemed like an indescribable luxury. After showering, she found new clothes of her size in the closet, dresses, pants, blouses, all with tags still attached. She decided on a simple light blue dress and comfortable sandals. Michael's office was a spacious room with bookshelves full of books and large windows. He was waiting for her seated behind an elegant solid wood desk, reviewing some documents. "Good morning," he greeted, standing up to invite her to sit. "Did you sleep well?" Sarah nodded. "Better than in years, to be honest." "I'm glad to hear that." Michael sat across from her, his expression serious but gentle. "Sarah, before talking about the future, I need to better understand your situation. Do you feel comfortable telling me?" She hesitated, but something in the genuine concern of his blue eyes encouraged her to speak. She told him everything: her parents' death, the first years with her uncles, how they gradually began to exploit her, the arranged meetings, the abuse, and finally the pregnancy resulting from one of those forced encounters. Michael listened without interrupting, his face reflecting a mixture of compassion and controlled indignation. "I never reported anything because who would believe me?" she explained. "They have friends in the local police. Besides, they always threatened to leave me on the street if I caused problems." "I understand," said Michael when she finished. "What they did to you is criminal. They deserve to be prosecuted, but I respect if you don't want to follow that path." "I just want to get away," she replied with a trembling voice. "Start over for my baby." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "I can help you with that. I have properties in San Francisco, Los Angeles, even outside the country. You could move wherever you want with a job and a safe home." The offer was incredibly generous, almost unreal. "Why are you doing this for me? There has to be something you want in return." Michael stood up and walked to the window, observing the garden for a moment before responding. "When I was 16, my younger sister got involved with an older man who mistreated her. Nobody listened when she asked for help, not even me. We thought she was exaggerating." He paused, his voice tinged with an old but still present pain. One day she couldn't take it anymore and made an irreversible decision. He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting a determination forged in suffering. Since then I promised myself that I would never again ignore someone in danger. It's not charity, Sarah. It's doing what's right. The silence that followed was charged with emotions. Sarah felt that for the first time in a long time, someone really saw her as a person, not as an object or a burden. "There's something else," said Michael, returning to his seat. "Regarding the baby, legally you'll need protection. Your uncles could try to claim rights if they discover your pregnancy." She hadn't thought of that. A new wave of anxiety invaded her. "I have a proposal," he continued. "It's unconventional, but it could solve several problems at once." Sarah looked at him expectantly. "A legal marriage," he said directly. "It would give you my surname, legal protection, and I could recognize the child as mine. It would be an agreement, not a real marriage." The proposal left her speechless. Marrying this man she barely knew sounded like madness. "You don't need to answer now," he added quickly. "Think about it, there's no pressure." Sarah nodded, grateful for the space to reflect. "I'll consider it, and thank you for everything." When she left the office, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Michael's proposal was surprising, but was it really so absurd? A marriage of convenience that would protect her child and give her stability. What she couldn't predict was how her feelings for Michael would begin to change in the following days, nor how her uncles would react when they discovered her whereabouts. A week later, Sarah was gradually adapting to her new life at the Thompson mansion. She had decided to accept the job offer at one of Michael's foundations, dedicated to supporting women in vulnerable situations. The irony didn't escape her, but she felt she could contribute a valuable perspective from her own experience. Michael had remained respectful, giving her space, but ensuring she had everything necessary. The conversations during dinners were increasingly fluid, revealing a complex, intelligent, and surprisingly vulnerable man beneath his facade of powerful businessman. One afternoon, while Sarah was reading in the garden, a commotion at the main entrance caught her attention. Raised voices, including one she immediately recognized and that froze her blood. Her uncle Ernest. "I demand to see her! I know she's here!" She was paralyzed, the book falling from her hands. How had they found her? Michael appeared in the garden, his expression worried. "Your uncles are at the entrance. I don't know how they discovered you're here." "Someone must have seen us together," Sarah murmured, trembling slightly. "What do we do?" asked Michael. "It depends on you," he replied. "I can make them leave, or you can face them with my support. I'll be by your side, whatever happens." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, gathering courage. For years she had lowered her head before her uncles, submitting to abuse out of fear and lack of options. But now she had something to fight for, her baby, her future. "I'm going to face them," she decided, standing up. "I need to end this once and for all." Michael nodded with approval. "I'll be with you the whole time." In the foyer, Ernest and Connie waited, their faces contorted with anger. Seeing Sarah enter with Michael, Ernest took a threatening step toward her, but stopped when the mansion's security team discreetly interposed. "Ungrateful!" spat Connie, pointing at her accusingly. "This is how you repay everything we did for you? Running away with a rich man?" Sarah felt the words get stuck in her throat, but Michael's hand on her back gave her strength. "Everything you did for me?" she finally replied, her voice trembling but firm. "Are you referring to mistreating me, to selling me like I was merchandise, to stealing the money I earned working?" Ernest flushed with fury. "We took care of you when no one else would. We gave you a roof." "You gave me hell," Sarah corrected, feeling each word release years of accumulated pain. "You stole my inheritance, isolated me from any support, treated me like a slave, and now you intend to have rights over me. You're a minor. You're under our legal guardianship." Ernest threatened, trying a new tactic. Michael intervened then, his voice calm but with an authority that filled the environment. Miss Wilson is 26 years old. She's an adult with full rights and is under my protection now. Your protection? Connie let out a contemptuous laugh. Oh, your bed, you mean? How much did you sell yourself for, Sarah? Because we could have gotten a better price. The word struck Sarah like a whip, but instead of shrinking, she stood up with dignity. Mr. Thompson has treated me with more respect in 1 week than you did in 15 years. He didn't ask me for anything in return for his help. He understands something you never comprehended, the value of human dignity. Ernest changed strategy, now addressing Michael. You don't know what you're getting into, sir. This girl is full of problems. Come, let's talk man to man. Michael smiled, but it was a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. We have nothing to talk about. I suggest you leave right now, willingly. Are you threatening us? Ernest stepped forward, but stopped when he saw 2 security guards approaching. I'm informing, Michael replied calmly. Sarah is here of her own free will. Any attempt to approach her in the future will be considered harassment, and I will act legally. Connie grabbed her husband's arm. Let's go, Ernest. She doesn't need us anymore. Then, looking at Sarah with contempt, she added, but remember my words. When he gets tired of you and leaves you, don't come crying to our door. I won't come, Sarah assured. I'd rather live on the street than go back with you. When they finally left, Sarah felt her legs fail. Michael supported her in time, guiding her to a nearby armchair. Breathe deeply, he suggested, kneeling in front of her. You did very well. She nodded, fighting against tears. They weren't tears of sadness, but of liberation. For the first time in years, she had faced her oppressors. She had found her voice. Thank you for being by my side, she murmured. Michael took her hands in his. I'll always be by your side, Sarah, if you allow me. In that moment, with adrenaline still running through her veins, she made a decision. About your proposal, the marriage one. He looked at her expectantly, without pressuring her. I accept, she said firmly, not just for legal protection, but because I trust you. And that's something I haven't felt for anyone in a long time. Michael's smile was genuine this time, reaching his eyes. I'll do everything possible to never betray that trust. What Sarah didn't tell him, what she was barely beginning to admit to herself, was that her feelings for him were evolving rapidly beyond gratitude. There was something about Michael Thompson, a mixture of strength and vulnerability, of power and compassion, that was beginning to touch parts of her heart she believed were dead. 2 days later, in a discreet but elegant civil ceremony, Sarah Wilson officially became Sarah Thompson. The only witness was Peter, Michael's personal assistant, along with Mrs. Rose, who had prepared a small banquet to celebrate. It's not necessary for us to share a room, Michael clarified that night, while they dined in the garden under the stars of Newport Beach. As I said, this is an agreement to protect you and the baby. Sarah nodded, grateful for his respect. I know that, and I appreciate it. However, he continued, serving her more lemon water, to the outside world, we're a real couple. There will be social events, business meetings. Are you prepared for that? I'll try not to embarrass you, she replied with a shy smile. Michael looked at her seriously. You could never embarrass me, Sarah. You're an extraordinary woman who survived terrible circumstances with dignity and strength. I'm proud to have you as my wife, even if it's only on paper. His words awakened a blush on her cheeks and a little butterfly in her stomach that had nothing to do with pregnancy. And you? She asked, changing the subject. A man like you must have suitors. What will they say when they know you married so suddenly? A shadow briefly crossed Michael's face. I've had relationships, of course, but nothing serious in recent years. My work consumes most of my time. Your family? My parents died 10 years ago in a plane accident. My sister, as I told you, is no longer with us. I have some distant cousins, but we don't maintain close contact. Sarah felt a pang of compassion. Despite his wealth and power, Michael was as alone as she was. It seems we both needed a family, she commented softly. He looked at her with intensity, and for a moment seemed about to say something deeper. Instead, he raised his glass. To new beginnings, he toasted. To new beginnings, she repeated, feeling that she was really on the edge of something transformative. The grand ballroom of the Newport Beach Business Club shone with the light of crystal chandeliers and the clinking of champagne glasses. The region's elite had gathered for the annual charity ball, an event where business, politics, and the ever-present game of social status mixed. For Sarah, who had been Michael Thompson's official wife for 3 months, it was her first important appearance in society. Her belly was just beginning to show signs of pregnancy, disguised under an elegant emerald green dress that enhanced her eyes. "You look beautiful," Michael whispered in her ear as they entered the ballroom. Nervous, terrified, she admitted with a tense smile, "Everyone is looking at us." And it was true. The news of the sudden marriage of elusive businessman Michael Thompson to an unknown woman had unleashed a hurricane of gossip in Newport Beach high society. Speculation ranged from a pregnancy, although no one knew for sure, to conspiracy theories about hidden business interests. "Let them look," he replied, taking her hand firmly. "I'm very proud to present you as my wife." Those 3 words, "my wife," still sounded strange to Sarah. In recent months, her relationship with Michael had evolved in complex ways. They lived together but in separate rooms. They shared meals but maintained independent lives during the day. And yet, something was growing between them. Glances that lasted a second longer than necessary, conversations that extended until dawn, small casual touches that sent electric shocks through her skin. "Oh, Michael, finally you deign to appear." The shrill voice of a woman interrupted her thoughts. "And this must be your mysterious wife." The woman was tall and thin to the extreme, with a black dress that seemed to cost more than everything Sarah had ever owned in her life. Her black hair, perfectly styled, framed a beautiful but hard face, with eyes that scanned Sarah from top to bottom with evident disdain. "Victoria Reed," Michael introduced with professional cordiality. "Sarah, my wife, Victoria." Victoria extended a hand with perfect manicure. "Delighted." All of Newport Beach has been speculating about who managed to catch the city's most coveted bachelor. Her tone made it clear that she considered the marriage as some kind of trap or stratagem by Sarah. "The pleasure is mine," Sarah replied, shaking her hand with more firmness than necessary. "Michael told me about you." It was a small lie. Michael had barely mentioned Victoria Reed, daughter of an important Chinese-American investor, and according to Sarah was beginning to suspect, possibly, an ex-girlfriend. "Really?" Victoria arched a perfectly lined eyebrow. "I'm surprised. Michael has always been so reserved." Her gaze shifted to Sarah's belly, stopping a second longer than appropriate. "Although lately he's made quite impulsive decisions." Michael gently placed his hand on Sarah's back. "My marriage was the most lucid decision I've made in years. If you'll excuse us, Victoria, there are several people I want Sarah to meet." As they walked away, Sarah felt Victoria's gaze, piercing her back. "I don't think she liked me," she murmured. Michael smiled slightly. "Victoria has trouble with any woman she considers competition. Don't worry about her." The night progressed among introductions, superficial conversations, and curious glances. To Sarah's surprise, she discovered she could navigate this environment better than expected. Years of silently observing people had given her sharp social intuition. "Your wife is charming, Michael," commented an elderly senator. "So refreshing to find someone without pretensions in these circles." "That's what I love most about her," Michael replied. And although Sarah knew it was part of the act, her heart did a somersault when she heard the word love on his lips. Near midnight, Sarah excused herself to go to the bathroom. She felt tired, and the pregnancy nausea, which had diminished in recent weeks, threatened to return. In the luxurious ladies' room, she allowed herself a moment of respite, observing her reflection in the mirror. Who was this elegant woman looking back at her? The door opened, and Victoria Reed and another woman entered, both speaking in low voices. They didn't notice her presence in the separate stall. "I simply can't believe it," Victoria was saying. "Michael could have had any woman in the city, and he chooses this. Nobody." "They say she worked as a waitress," the other woman replied with a scandalized tone, "and there are rumors about her family. Something sordid." Victoria let out a cruel laugh. "It's obvious what happened. She managed to get pregnant and trapped him. The old baby trick, though I must admit she aimed high." "Are you sure she's pregnant?" "Please, it's evident. She touches her belly constantly and didn't drink alcohol all night. Michael is too honorable for his own good. He certainly felt he had to do the right thing." Sarah felt the air become heavy in her lungs. Victoria's words confirmed her worst fears, that people would think exactly that about her, that they would see her as an opportunist, a gold digger. With all the dignity she could muster, she emerged from her hiding place. The two women visibly startled. "Excuse me," Sarah said with a controlled voice. "I didn't mean to interrupt such an interesting conversation about my marriage." Victoria paled momentarily before regaining her composure. "Oh, how rude of us. We were just sharing observations." "Very insightful observations," Sarah replied, "though inaccurate in important points. My baby isn't Michael's." The confession left both women speechless. "Michael knows, of course," she continued, holding Victoria's gaze without wavering. "It was the first thing I shared with him, my complete truth without embellishments. Something you apparently don't understand." Without waiting for a response, Sarah left the bathroom with her head held high, though her heart was beating frantically. She hadn't planned to reveal that information, but something in Victoria's cruelty had triggered an impulse of honesty. When she returned to the ballroom, she saw Michael in conversation with a group of businessmen. Noticing her altered expression, he immediately excused himself and approached her. "Are you okay?" he asked in a low voice. "You're pale. Can we go?" she whispered. "I'll explain in the car." During the drive home, Sarah told him what had happened. To her surprise, Michael didn't seem bothered by her revelation. "I don't care what Victoria or anyone else thinks," he said with serenity. "What matters is that you and the baby are well and safe. But now everyone will know that the child isn't yours. It could affect your reputation, your business." Michael took her hand. "Sarah, I'm perfectly capable of dealing with gossip. What worries me is how this affects you." She felt tears accumulating. "I don't understand why you do all this for me. Sometimes I think I'm going to wake up and discover it was all a dream." The car stopped in front of the mansion. Instead of getting out immediately, Michael turned to her. In the darkness, his blue eyes shone with intensity. "It's not a dream," he said softly, "and I do this because I care about you, Sarah. More than I should, considering our agreement." Sarah held her breath. It was the first time Michael hinted that his feelings went beyond the practical agreement they had established. "You matter to me, too," she admitted in a whisper, "and it scares me how much you matter." The tension between them was palpable, charged with unexpressed desire and contained emotions. For a moment, it seemed Michael was going to kiss her. Instead, he brought her hand to his lips and kissed it softly. "One step at a time," he murmured against her skin. "We have time." That night, while preparing for sleep in her solitary room, Sarah reflected on how her life had changed, from despair to hope, from fear to the possibility of love. She caressed her belly, where the small life grew that ironically, had been the catalyst for all these changes. "Thank you," she whispered to her unborn baby. "Thank you for bringing me here." What she didn't know was that Victoria Reed hadn't finished with her, and that the coming months would test the foundations of her new life in ways she couldn't imagine. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows of Baby Boutique, the exclusive children's clothing store in the most elegant area of Newport Beach. Sarah, now 5 months pregnant with a pronounced belly, delightedly examined the small baby clothes. "Can I help you with something, ma'am?" asked a saleswoman with a professional smile. "Just looking, thank you," Sarah replied, caressing the soft fabric of a yellow onesie. "We still don't know if it will be a boy or girl, so I'm looking for neutral colors." The recent ultrasound had revealed the surprise. She was expecting twins. The news had left her and Michael stunned and excited in equal parts. 2 babies, an instant family. Her relationship with Michael had evolved in recent months into something deeper and more complex than their initial agreement. Although they still maintained separate rooms, they spent increasingly more time together. Conversations until late hours, beach walks hand in hand, small gestures of affection that revealed growing feelings. "Sarah Wilson, or should I say, Mrs. Thompson?" The voice froze her blood. She turned slowly to find herself face to face with Victoria Reed, as impeccably dressed as always, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Miss Reed," Sarah greeted cautiously, "what a surprise to find you here." Victoria looked ostentatiously at Sarah's belly. "I see the rumors were true. Congratulations on the twins. News travels fast in our circles." Sarah tensed. They hadn't made the twin news public. Only Michael, she, and the doctor knew. "My husband and I are very excited," she replied, deliberately emphasizing the word husband. Victoria approached, lowering her voice. "Come on, dear. Let's drop the formalities between us. Do you really believe this fairy tale will last? Michael is a powerful man with needs and standards that, let's be honest, you'll never be able to meet." The venom in her words was palpable, but Sarah remained firm. These months with Michael had given her a confidence she'd never had before. "I appreciate your concern about my marriage, Miss Reed, but I assure you we're perfectly fine." Victoria let out a sardonic laugh. "Please. Everyone knows those babies aren't even his. How long do you think it'll be before he gets tired of playing happy family with a pregnant waitress carrying another man's children?" The words were designed to hurt, and they succeeded. But Sarah had survived worse attacks. "You know what's saddest, Miss Reed? That you measure people's worth by money or social position. Michael isn't like that, and that's one of the reasons I love him." The declaration surprised them both. Sarah had never spoken that word aloud, though she felt it growing in her heart day by day. "Love?" Victoria spat as if it were an obscene word. "How convenient. You live in his mansion, spend his money, carry his surname, and call it love." Sarah was about to respond when she noticed the saleswoman and other customers beginning to watch the scene with interest. The last thing she wanted was a public scandal. "If you'll excuse me," she said with all the dignity she could muster, "I have shopping to finish." She tried to walk away, but Victoria grabbed her arm with surprising force. "This isn't over, Sarah. Michael deserves better than a gold digger like you." At that moment, an authoritative male voice echoed in the store. "Release my customer immediately, miss, or I'll call security." An older, elegantly dressed man approached them. From the respect and reaction of the saleswomen, Sarah deduced he must be the store owner. "Mr. Williams," Victoria greeted, releasing Sarah but maintaining her composure. "We were just having a friendly conversation between acquaintances." "It didn't look very friendly from where I was standing," the man replied coldly. "Mrs. Thompson, are you all right?" Sarah nodded, surprised that he knew her name. "Miss Reed," Mr. Williams continued, "I would appreciate if you left my establishment. I don't tolerate hostile behavior toward our customers, especially pregnant women. Victoria paled visibly. Are you throwing me out? My family has shopped at this store for generations, and we've always appreciated your patronage, he replied with professional firmness. But I have principles that aren't for sale. Please leave. With a last venomous look at Sarah, Victoria left the store, her heels echoing like small hammers on the marble floor. I deeply apologize for this incident, Mrs. Thompson, said Mr. Williams after Victoria left. I hope it doesn't affect your experience in our store. On the contrary, Sarah replied sincerely. Your intervention was much appreciated, Mr. Williams. Thank you. The man smiled kindly. I've known your husband for years. He's an honorable man, and I can see why he chose you. He paused before adding, Miss Reed has been interested in your husband for a long time. Rejection can be difficult for some people to accept. Sarah nodded, finally understanding the intensity of Victoria's animosity. It wasn't just class disdain, it was jealousy. Victoria had wanted the position Sarah now occupied. Would you like to? You see our new collection of cribs for twins, Mr. Williams offered, skillfully changing the subject. They just arrived from Italy and are truly exceptional. While touring the store with the kind owner, Sarah reflected on the incident. Victoria wasn't the only one questioning her marriage. Despite the growing intimacy between her and Michael, sometimes she was still assaulted by doubts. Was it possible that someone like him really loved her, or was his kindness simply part of his chivalrous nature? That night, during dinner, Sarah told Michael about what happened with Victoria. To her surprise, he seemed more bothered than expected. This went too far, he said, his voice controlled but with a thread of steel. First the gossip, now harassing you in public. I'll have to speak with her. I don't want to cause problems, Sarah replied. I know her family is important for your business. Michael took her hand across the table. You're important to me. Victoria needs to understand that our marriage isn't a passing phase. There was an intensity in his blue eyes that made Sarah's heart race. Isn't it? She asked. Raphael seemed surprised by the question. Is that what you think? That someday I'll get tired of you and the children? She lowered her gaze, suddenly vulnerable. Sometimes I wonder why someone like you would want to be with someone like me long term. I don't have a university education, or connections, or fortune. Sarah, he interrupted softly, lifting her chin so she would look at him. I have all those things, and none of them made me happy. You do. The words floated between them, charged with meaning. For a long moment they looked at each other, the atmosphere so dense with unexpressed emotions it seemed hard to breathe. People like Victoria, Michael continued, measure a person's worth by their bank account or surname. I value you for your courage, honesty, capacity to love despite everything you've suffered. That's infinitely more valuable. Sarah felt tears accumulating in her eyes. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that we're here, about to form a family. Michael stood up and walked around the table, kneeling beside her chair to be at her eye level. It's very real, he affirmed, taking her hands in his. And I want you to know something. When I accepted this marriage, I did it to help you. But in these months, my feelings have changed, grown. Sarah held her breath, afraid to break the moment with any movement. I've fallen in love with you, Sarah, he declared finally. It's not gratitude or pity, or any of the things you're certainly thinking. It's love, simple and complicated at the same time. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks now. You don't need to say anything, he assured her. I just wanted you to know. I wanted Victoria and everyone else to know too. This is real for me. On impulse, Sarah leaned forward and pressed her lips against his. It was their first kiss, and it was like all the pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. Michael responded with gentleness at first, then with growing intensity, his hands framing her face as if it was something infinitely precious. When they finally separated, both were breathless. "I love you too," she confessed, the words flowing from the depths of her being. "I think from the first moment you offered help without asking for anything in return." Michael smiled, a complete smile that illuminated his eyes. "So, how about we make this marriage of convenience into something real in every sense?" That night, Sarah didn't sleep in her separate room. For the first time, she shared not only Michael's bed, but also her heart completely. However, while they celebrated their newly declared love, Victoria Reed was planning her revenge, and Sarah's uncles hadn't given up claiming what they considered belonged to them, a part of the Thompson fortune. The large atrium of Newport Beach Private Hospital was flooded with mourning. Light when Michael Thompson entered hurriedly, his face tense with worry. The call had reached him in the middle of an important meeting in Los Angeles. Sarah, 7 months pregnant, had been hospitalized as an emergency. "My wife," he said breathlessly to the receptionist, "Sarah Thompson. I was told she was admitted a few hours ago." "Yes, Mr. Thompson," the woman replied, recognizing him immediately. "She's in room 302. Dr. Martinez is attending to her." Michael climbed the stairs 2 at a time, too anxious to wait for the elevator. The twins weren't supposed to be born yet. 2 full months remained. On the private flight from the capital to Newport Beach, his mind had imagined the worst possible scenarios. When he reached the room, he found Sarah lying in bed, pale but conscious. Her face lit up when she saw him. "We're okay," she said before he could ask. "It was just a false alarm, premature contractions, but they managed to stop them." Michael released the air he didn't know he was, holding and approached to kiss her forehead. "You scared me," he murmured against her hair. "Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your meeting," she replied, squeezing his hand. "But Mrs. Rose insisted on calling the ambulance when she saw me doubled over in pain." "She did right," he assured her, sitting beside her on the bed. "What did the doctor say?" "I need absolute rest until the end of the pregnancy," Sarah explained with a sigh of resignation. "The twins are fine, but there's risk of premature delivery if I don't take care of myself." Michael nodded seriously. "I'll do everything necessary to make you comfortable and calm at home." "And your trip to San Francisco next week?" "I'll cancel it," he replied without hesitation. "Peter can handle those meetings." Sarah smiled, feeling a warm wave of gratitude and love. In recent months, her relationship with Michael had flourished in ways she never believed possible. From a marriage of convenience, they had evolved into a genuine union based on respect, trust, and a love that grew every day. The door opened and Dr. Martinez entered, an older man with a paternal appearance and gentle eyes. "Mr. Thompson, I'm glad you arrived," he greeted, extending his hand. "Your wife gave us a little scare, but fortunately we acted in time." "What exactly is the situation, Doctor?" Michael asked. "The twins are developing normally, but Mrs. Thompson's uterus shows signs of weakening. It's common in multiple pregnancies, but requires precaution." The doctor looked at them seriously. "Absolute rest, no stress, and constant monitoring. You can go home tomorrow, but with these strict indications." After some additional instructions, the doctor left them alone again. Michael sat next to Sarah, gently caressing her belly where their children, because that's how he considered them, regardless of biology, grew every day. "I was thinking," he said after a while, "maybe we should move temporarily to the ranch in Napa Valley. The air is purer, there are fewer unexpected visitors." The mention of unexpected visitors made a shadow cross Sarah's face. In recent weeks, her uncles had tried to contact her several times, even appearing at the mansion when Michael was traveling. Although the staff had strict instructions not to allow their entry, their persistence was disturbing. "I think it's a good idea," she agreed. "I love that place." They had spent a weekend at Aurora Ranch, a Thompson family property on the outskirts of Napa Valley. With its open fields, fruit trees, and a main house in colonial style, Sarah had instantly fallen in love with the place. When the twins are born, they can grow up there part of the time. Michael smiled, imagining the future, with space to run and play. Have you thought of names? Sarah asked, placing her hand over his on her belly. I'd like to call our daughter Emma, he replied. Like my mother. And for the boy, David, she suggested. Like my father. Michael smiled, moved. Emma and David Thompson. Sounds perfect. A knock on the door interrupted the moment. To their surprise, who entered wasn't a nurse, but Victoria Reed, impeccably dressed and with a huge flower arrangement. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I heard about what happened and wanted to come personally to wish the best. Michael visibly tensed, while Sarah tried to maintain composure. Since the incident at the boutique, Michael had had a direct conversation with Victoria, making clear that her behavior had been unacceptable and that their friendship was at risk if she continued with her hostility toward Sarah. Thank you for coming, Victoria, Michael replied with professional cordiality. It's an unexpected gesture. Victoria placed the flowers on a nearby table and approached the bed, studying Sarah with a calculating look. Multiple pregnancies are so delicate, she commented with feigned concern. Especially at... How old are you? Dear, 26, Sarah corrected, refusing to show discomfort, and the doctor said everything will be fine, with proper rest. Victoria nodded slowly. Of course. Well, I won't take more of your time. I just wanted to say that my father is very interested in the hotel chain expansion. Michael, we should meet soon. My assistant will coordinate a meeting when appropriate, he replied, his tone making clear this wasn't the time to talk business. When Victoria finally left, Sarah sighed. With relief. There's something about her that deeply unsettles me, she confessed. It's like every word hides a knife. Michael took her hand. Victoria has always been intense, but don't worry about her. The only important thing now is you and the babies. What neither of them knew was that Victoria Reed had come to the hospital with a very specific purpose, to confirm with her own eyes Sarah's vulnerability, information she would use to her advantage very soon. Aurora Ranch proved to be the perfect refuge for Sarah during the last weeks of her pregnancy. The main house, with its high ceilings, wide corridors, and ventilated rooms, offered a comfort that not even the luxurious Newport Beach mansion could equal. Michael had adapted one of the rooms as a temporary office, allowing him to work from home most of the time. He only traveled when absolutely necessary, and never for more than a day. One afternoon, while Sarah rested on the porch, watching the sun begin to set over the sugarcane fields, Michael joined her with a worried expression. I just received a disturbing call, he said, sitting beside her. Apparently your uncles gave an interview to a local gossip magazine. They're saying things about us. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the peace of recent weeks vanish. What kind of things? That you manipulated me, that I took you away from them, that I keep you isolated. He paused, visibly uncomfortable. They also insinuate that the twins might have a known father in Newport Beach, someone who supposedly paid you for companionship. The words fell like stones in Sarah's stomach. Her uncles were doing exactly what she most feared, exposing her past, distorting it to make her look like a calculating woman who had trapped a millionaire. It's not the first time we've faced gossip, Michael tried to reassure her. My lawyers are already working on a defamation suit. But this is different, she replied with tears forming in her eyes. It's not just about me or us. When the twins grow up, these stories will be there on the internet in people's memory. Michael embraced her carefully, conscious of her advanced pregnancy. We'll fight this, Sarah. Your past doesn't define who you are now or our family's future. During the following days, tension increased when more details of the interview began to circulate. Sarah's uncles had painted a venomous portrait. According to them, they had lovingly cared for their orphaned niece, only for her to betray them by getting a rich benefactor. There were half-truths mixed with absolute lies, making the story sufficiently credible for those who didn't know the reality. "I need to face them," Sarah declared one morning while they had breakfast. "Publicly." Michael looked at her with concern. "The doctor said no stress, and this would be extremely stressful." "Silence only gives them more power," she argued. "All my life I've stayed quiet, kept my head down to avoid problems. But now, it's not just about me. It's about our children, their future, our family." There was so much determination in her brown eyes that Michael knew he couldn't dissuade her. "What exactly do you propose?" "An interview. Just one, with a respected journalist. I want to tell my story, the real one, without dramatizations or victimization, just the truth." Michael reflected for a moment. "I know someone who could do this appropriately, Maria Rodriguez from USA Today. She's fair and professional." And so it was that 3 days later, Maria Rodriguez arrived at the ranch for an exclusive with Sarah Thompson. The interview would take place in the intimacy of the place without additional photographers or television crews. Dressed with simple elegance in a turquoise maternity dress, Sarah received the journalist on the porch. Michael would be present, but they had agreed he would only intervene if absolutely necessary. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for receiving me," Maria began, a woman of about 40, with an intelligent look. "I must say this interview has generated a lot of expectation." "I imagine," Sarah replied with a calm smile. "Many stories have been circulating about me lately. That's why I decided to speak." "Is that why you decided to speak now?" "Partially, but mainly because I believe there are stories that need to be told. Not to generate pity or indignation, but so other people who are living similar situations know there's a way out." For the next 2 hours, Sarah narrated her story with raw honesty. She spoke of her parents' death, of how her uncles gradually went from being guardians to exploiters. She described the arrangements they made with wealthy men, the humiliations, economic control, social isolation. "The hardest thing wasn't the blows or insults," she explained with a firm voice. "It was losing hope, believing that was all the value I had as a human being." When Maria asked about how she met Michael, her face visibly lit up. "He was the first person in years who saw me as a complete human being, not as an object or a burden. He offered me help without expecting anything in return, and that was revolutionary for me." The journalist, visibly moved, approached the topic of pregnancy with delicacy. "There are rumors about the paternity of your twins." "They're not rumors. They're facts I haven't hidden from my husband or anyone who matters," Sarah replied with dignity. "These children were conceived before I met Michael, in circumstances I prefer not to detail out of respect for them when they grow up. What I can say is that Michael accepted them as his own from the first moment, with a love that many biological parents never come to feel." Michael, who had remained silent, gently took Sarah's hand at this point. The gesture, unplanned and unrehearsed, captured the essence of their relationship better than any words. "One last question, Mrs. Thompson," said Maria. "What would you say to other women who are trapped in situations of abuse or exploitation like the one you lived?" Sarah reflected for a moment before responding. "I would say that their worth as people doesn't depend on what others made them believe. That fear is real and valid, but to seek help, even if it's one small step at a time, and to know they deserve respect and dignity, no matter their past or circumstances." When the interview ended and Maria left, Sarah felt exhausted but liberated. For the first time she had told her story on her own terms, without shame or fear. "I'm proud of you," said Michael, embracing her tenderly. "Not everyone has the courage to do what you just did." "Thank you for being by my side," she replied, leaning against his chest. "With you, I found not only security, but the strength to face my past. The interview was published 3 days later, generating a wave of support that surprised even Sarah. Dozens of women began contacting Michael's foundation, sharing similar stories of abuse and seeking help to escape. Her uncles, faced with public condemnation and an imminent defamation lawsuit, chose to disappear from Newport Beach, moving, according to rumors, to a northern state. However, not everyone received Sarah's story with empathy. In her elegant office in downtown Newport Beach, Victoria Reed read the interview with growing fury. "Pathetic," she murmured to herself. "All this drama to justify the obvious, that she trapped a millionaire with a convenient pregnancy." Her assistant entered discreetly. "Miss Reed, the taxi is waiting to take you to the airport." Victoria nodded, putting the magazine in her bag. "Perfect. And you confirmed the meeting with Michael for when I return from Hong Kong?" "Yes, miss. Mr. Thompson will receive you at his offices next Thursday at 10 a.m. A calculating smile drew on Victoria's face. During her trip to Hong Kong, she would not only close important business for the family company, but also meet with her father, who had a very specific proposal for Michael. A business merger that would require a gesture of good faith, and Victoria knew exactly what kind of gesture her father expected. A personal commitment, a family alliance. Something that, of course, would be incompatible with his current marriage. "Michael is too intelligent to refuse $200 million for sentimentalism," she thought while getting in the taxi. "And when he has to choose between his precious bastard twins and his empire's future, well, all men have a price." What Victoria couldn't predict was that, upon her return, she would find a completely different panorama than expected. Meanwhile, at Aurora Ranch, Sarah was experiencing the first labor pains, 2 weeks earlier than predicted. Michael, who cancelled all his meetings at the first sign that the babies were on their way, was urgently taking her to the hospital. "We'll be fine," she assured between contractions, squeezing his hand tightly. "All 4 of us will be fine." And for the first time in her life, Sarah fully believed her own words. She had faith in the future, in the love she had found, in the family they were about to complete. In the hospital room, while doctors prepared to receive the twins, Michael held Sarah's face in his hands. "I love you," he said with simple sincerity. "More than I ever believed possible to love someone." "I love you too," she replied, with tears of pain and joy mixing on her cheeks. "Thank you for saving me." "No, Sarah," he corrected. "You saved yourself. I was just here to see you flourish." Hours later, when Emma and David Thompson came into the world with strong cries and small clenched fists, Michael and Sarah knew they had built something more powerful than any fortune or business empire. A family based on respect, honesty, and a love that had transcended the most unlikely circumstances. And while Victoria Reed landed in Hong Kong, planning the destruction of that bond, she couldn't imagine she was destined for failure. Because some connections are simply unbreakable, forged in the fire of adversity and sealed with something all the money in the world can't buy: true love. In her sophisticated hotel suite in Hong Kong, Victoria Reed reviewed the documents of the proposal her father, David Lin, planned to make to Michael Thompson. The merger between Lin Global Investments and Thompson Group would create one of the most powerful business conglomerates in North America. "Are you sure Thompson will seriously consider our condition?" asked her father, a severe 60-year-old man whose business success was only matched by his ruthlessness. "Michael is a businessman first and foremost," Victoria replied with confidence. $200 million and exclusive access to the Asian market aren't things he would reject for a pregnant waitress he met a few months ago. David nodded thoughtfully. "But as I understand, now those children have been born, it complicates things." "On the contrary," Victoria smiled, "it makes him more vulnerable. Michael has always had that ridiculous weakness, his sense of honor. If we appeal to the financial security of those children, he might even see it as a noble sacrifice. What Victoria didn't mention to her father was her additional plan. The information she had collected about Sarah's past. Details that not even the recent interview had revealed. Information that, presented correctly, could make Sarah look exactly like Victoria believed she was. An opportunist who had seduced a vulnerable man to secure her future. "You've been obsessed with Thompson for years," David observed with a neutral tone. "I hope your personal feelings don't cloud your business judgment." Victoria tensed. "This has nothing to do with personal feelings. Michael Thompson represents the perfect connection between our economic interests in America and our future projects." Her father looked at her fixedly, not totally convinced. "Be that as it may, we have 2 weeks to prepare the presentation. When we return to America, I want everything ready for the board meeting." Meanwhile, in Newport Beach, life had acquired a new rhythm for Michael and Sarah. The twins, now 3 weeks old, had completely transformed the mansion's dynamic. Sleepless nights, feedings every 3 hours, small moments of calm between crying storms. "They're perfect," Michael whispered one morning, watching the babies sleep in their cribs. Emma with a downy dark hair and Sarah's delicate features, David with chubby cheeks and a serene expression even. In dreams, Sarah, exhausted but radiant, leaned on his shoulder. "Sometimes I can't believe they're real, that all this is real." The adaptation to fatherhood had been surprisingly natural for Michael. He actively participated in every aspect of the twins' care, from changing diapers to calming cries at 3 in the morning. For Sarah, seeing him interact with the babies only deepened her love for him. One afternoon, while Sarah fed Emma and Michael gently rocked David, Peter arrived with urgent news. "Sir, excuse the interruption," said the assistant, "but I just received important information. The Lin family returned from Hong Kong and requests an immediate meeting with you. It seems to be about the merger proposal." Michael slightly frowned. "I thought that meeting was scheduled for next week." "It was, sir. But apparently they moved up their return specifically to discuss this with you as soon as possible." "I understand. Please schedule the meeting for the day after tomorrow at the central offices. And Peter, investigate if there's been any significant change in Lin Global's financial structure in recent weeks." When Peter left, Sarah looked at Michael with curiosity. "Is something happening?" "I don't know," he replied thoughtfully. "The Lins aren't known for changing plans without a good reason. This sudden urgency about the merger makes me suspect there's something more at play." "Do you think it has to do with Victoria?" Michael sighed. "It's possible. Victoria has always had considerable influence on her father's decisions." Sarah lowered her gaze to Emma, who had fallen asleep in her arms. "I never asked, was there something between Victoria and you in the past?" The question floated in the air, charged with implications. Michael carefully sat beside her, still rocking David. "There was a time years ago when our families expected a union between us," he admitted. "We had some dates, nothing serious from my perspective. But Victoria, she always saw our relationship as something predestined, a perfect alliance between 2 business dynasties. Did you ever love her?" The question came out in a whisper. Michael shook his head firmly. "No, I respected her intelligence and determination, but there was never a real connection for me. A marriage with Victoria would have been exactly what we tried to avoid with our initial agreement, a union of convenience without love." The sincerity in his eyes reassured Sarah. "Thank you for telling me the truth." "I'll always tell you the truth, Sarah. It's the foundation of what we've built." 2 days later, Michael prepared for the meeting with the Lins at his office in downtown Newport Beach. Sarah had insisted on accompanying him, leaving the twins under Mrs. Rose's care for a few hours. "Are you sure you want to be present?" Michael asked while their driver took them to the Thompson Group's central offices. "It could be a tense meeting." Precisely because of that, I want to be there, she replied with determination. Victoria needs to understand that we're a team, that she can't play her manipulation games with you as if I don't exist. Michael took her hand, once again admiring the strength of the woman he had chosen as his life partner. There was barely anything left of that frightened young woman he had picked up in the rain less than a year ago. In her place was a confident woman, willing to defend her family tooth and nail if necessary. The Thompson Group offices occupied the top 5 floors of one of Newport Beach's most emblematic buildings. Modern, but with touches that honored the city's colonial architecture, the building was a reflection of Michael's business philosophy, respecting tradition while constantly innovating. When they arrived at the main conference room, Victoria and her father were already waiting. Victoria, impeccable in an intense red suit, could barely hide her surprise at seeing Sarah. "Michael, what a pleasure to see you," she greeted, deliberately ignoring Sarah. "And I see you brought company." "My wife," Michael corrected firmly. "Sarah is an integral part of all my important decisions." David Lynn, more pragmatic, extended his hand to Sarah. "Mrs. Thompson, a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard a lot about you." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Lynn," Sarah replied with a serene smile. "Michael speaks very highly of your companies and business vision." Once seated around the conference table, David went straight to the point. "Michael, as you know, our merger proposal could change the business landscape throughout North America. $200 million in initial investment, preferential access to Asian markets, and a structure that respects both companies' autonomy." Michael nodded. "The proposal is interesting, without a doubt, but I wonder what changed to make it so urgent now." Victoria exchanged a look with her father before intervening. "The market is changing rapidly, Michael. Other alliances are forming. If we don't act, now we'll lose a historic opportunity." "I understand the urgency from a market perspective," Michael replied, "but my analysts haven't detected any significant movement that would justify this sudden rush." A tense silence settled in the room. Finally, David Lynn sighed and placed a folder on the table. "There's an additional element in the proposal that wasn't in the preliminary documents," he said, pushing the folder toward Michael. "A personal guarantee clause." Michael opened the folder and read quickly, his expression becoming increasingly serious. When he finished, he passed the papers to Sarah. The clause was clear. As a guarantee of good faith and long-term commitment, a family alliance between the Lynns and the Thompsons was expected. In business terms, they were asking for a marriage between Victoria and Michael. "This is unacceptable," Michael said, closing the folder firmly. "I'm married, happily married. I don't see how a clause like this could even be considered." Victoria smiled with false sympathy. "Michael, we're all adults here. We know your current situation was a hasty arrangement due to unexpected circumstances. Nobody blames you for that. But now we're talking about your company's future, your legacy." Sarah, who had remained silent until that moment, spoke with a calm but firm voice. "Miss Reed, it seems there's a fundamental confusion in your perception of our marriage. It wasn't a hasty arrangement, but a conscious decision based on mutual love and respect." "How touching," Victoria replied with evident sarcasm. "But business is business, dear. And we're talking about $200 million and the future of 2 corporate empires. Surely you understand that some personal adjustments are necessary." Michael stood up, his patience exhausted. "This meeting is over. Any proposal that includes dissolving my marriage is unacceptable under any circumstances. I appreciate your time, but I must decline." David also stood up, his expression inscrutable. "Think carefully, Michael. This opportunity won't present itself twice. Your company could triple its value in 5 years with our investment." "My family has no price," Michael replied firmly. "And I suggest, Mr. Lynn, that you reconsider your negotiation strategy. There are lines that aren't crossed in business, and this is one of them. Victoria, who remained seated, looked directly at Sarah. I always wondered what Michael saw in you. Now I understand. You're good at acting this farce of true love. It's touching, but we all know the truth. Sarah held her gaze without wavering. The truth, Miss Reed, is that you can't buy what Michael and I share. Not with 200 million or 2 billion. How poetic, Victoria smiled with malice. You know I have informants? People who knew your life before Michael. I know exactly what kind of meetings your uncles arranged and with whom. The color momentarily left Sarah's face, but she recovered quickly. There's nothing in my past that Michael doesn't. No, it was the first thing I shared with him. My complete truth without embellishments, something you apparently don't understand. Victoria finally stood up, smoothing her skirt with calculated movements. This isn't the last word, Sarah. Nobody rejects my family. Nobody. We're not rejecting your family, Miss Reed, Michael intervened. We're rejecting an unacceptable proposal. There's a fundamental difference. When the Lynns finally left, Sarah collapsed into her chair, the stress of the confrontation taking its toll on her body, still recovering from childbirth. Are you okay? Michael asked, kneeling beside her and taking her hands. Yes, she assured him with a small smile. Just tired and worried. Victoria doesn't seem like the type of person who accepts no for an answer. Don't worry about her, Michael replied, gently caressing her cheek, or her father. There are other ways to expand the company without compromising what really matters. Back home, while watching the twins sleep in their cribs, Sarah reflected on how her life had changed in less than a year, from victim to survivor, from a woman without hope to a beloved mother and wife. Any regrets? Michael asked softly, as if he could read her thoughts. Sarah shook her head. Not one. Every step, even the painful ones, led me to you and our children. And you. Do you regret picking me up that rainy night? I only regret not finding you sooner, he replied, embracing her from behind while they contemplated the babies, thinking about everything you suffered before our paths crossed. The following weeks passed in relative calm. The twins grew healthy and strong, filling the house with their emerging little personalities. Emma, curious and determined from so early. David, calm and observant, with a smile that lit up his eyes. However, Victoria Reed's threat remained latent. Michael had reinforced security, worried about the woman's veiled threats. His business instincts told him Victoria wouldn't give up easily, especially with her wounded pride. The confirmation came a month later, when Peter entered Michael's office hurriedly, his usual composure altered by urgency. "Sir, there's a problem," he said, handing him a tablet. "This was just published on a financial blog and is being shared by all the major economic media." Michael quickly read the headline, "Thompson Group in Crisis. Rumors of accounting fraud and money laundering." The article, signed by a little-known journalist but linked to publications funded by the Lynn Group, detailed supposed irregularities in Michael's company's international operations. It cited anonymous sources within the company and supposedly leaked documents. "It's a coordinated attack," Michael concluded after reading each accusation. "It's false, but it's built on enough half-truths to seem credible." "The stocks are already falling," Peter informed. "Investors are nervous." Michael nodded, his mind working at full speed. "Call an immediate press conference and contact our legal department. We need to respond forcefully and quickly." When Peter left, Michael remained still for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling on his shoulders. This type of media attacks could destroy companies, even corporate empires built over generations. Sarah entered the office with Emma in her arms. "What's happening?" Peter seemed upset. Michael didn't want to worry her, but they had promised mutual honesty. He explained the situation, showing her the article. "It's Victoria, isn't it?" Sarah asked, sitting across from him with the baby now sleeping against her chest. Almost certainly, he confirmed. The journalist has connections with publications funded by the Lins, and the timing is too convenient. What can we do? Michael admired how Sarah had said we, not you. They really were a team, facing each challenge together. Fight, he replied with determination, with truth as our main weapon. Our books are clean, our operations are transparent, but we'll need time to demonstrate it publicly. And meanwhile, Victoria expects me to despair and accept her help, Sarah completed, understanding the strategy. A saving merger on her terms. Exactly. It's a calculated move to put me against the ropes. Sarah reflected for a moment, gently rocking Emma. What if we turned the situation around? If instead of defending ourselves we counterattacked? What do you have in mind? Michael asked, intrigued by the gleam in her brown eyes. Victoria wants a media war? Let's give her one, but on our terms. I have an idea. In the following days, while Michael's legal team prepared defamation suits and his executives worked to stabilize the stock price, Sarah implemented her own plan. As part of her work at the foundation, she had established relationships with several investigative journalists who covered stories about vulnerable women. One of them, Carlos Mendez, was known for exposing cases of corporate corruption and abuse of power. Sarah provided Carlos with detailed documentation about Lin Global's questionable labor practices in their Asian factories. Excessive hours, unsafe conditions, covered-up child labor. Information Michael had collected as part of his prior diligence before considering the merger, but had never made public. I don't want this to look like revenge, Sarah explained to Carlos during their meeting. This isn't personal. It's about transparency and corporate responsibility. Carlos, a principled man who had dedicated his career to exposing injustices, nodded understandingly. These practices deserve to be investigated, regardless of any personal conflict. But I must ask, Sarah, are you prepared for the consequences? The Lins are powerful. I know that, she replied with resolution, but Michael and I have faced worse things. We can't let fear prevent us from doing what's right. Carlos's report was published a week later. In one of the country's most respected newspapers, the investigation was rigorous, well-documented, and devastating for Lin Global's public image. It included worker testimonies, leaked internal documents, and analyses by labor rights experts. The reaction was immediate. Human rights groups demanded formal investigations. Ethical investors began withdrawing their support from Lin Global. The Chinese government, sensitive to the international image of its companies, announced a review of the company's operations. Victoria Reed appeared on national television, visibly shaken, accusing Michael Thompson of orchestrating a smear campaign. This is personal revenge for a rejected business proposal, she declared. The Thompson Group is diverting attention from its own problems. However, her defense sounded hollow in the face of the solidity of the evidence presented by Carlos, especially when other media began investigating on their own, discovering more irregularities in Lin Global's operations. Meanwhile, Michael had managed to stabilize his own company. An independent audit confirmed the falseness of the accusations against him, and several important investors publicly expressed their confidence in the Thompson Group. One night, while watching the news covering the Lin Global scandal, Sarah expressed some concern. Sometimes I wonder if we went too far, she confessed. I didn't want to destroy anyone, just protect ourselves. Michael embraced her, understanding her moral dilemma. We didn't destroy anything that wasn't built on rotten foundations, Sarah. The practices we exposed were real and affected vulnerable people. If Lin Global falls, it will be because of their own actions, not ours. I suppose you're right, she nodded. It's just that knowing my own past, I know what it's like to be judged. The difference is that you never exploited others for your benefit, Michael replied. Victoria and her father did so consciously for years. There's a fundamental moral difference there. The crisis reached its climax when David Lynn called an emergency press conference. Looking tired and defeated, he announced his resignation as CEO of Lynn Global, citing health reasons and the need to restructure the company to adapt to modern ethical standards. What he didn't mention, but was later revealed by internal sources, was that the board of directors had forced him to resign after discovering he had hidden critical information about labor practices, even from his own shareholders. Victoria Reed disappeared from the public eye. According to rumors, she had flown to Switzerland to distance herself from the scandal. Lynn Global survived, but significantly weakened and under new leadership with a clear mandate to reform its labor practices. For Sarah and Michael, the victory brought no celebration, but relief and reflection. They hadn't sought anyone's destruction, only to defend what they had built together. A year after the twins' birth, the A. Thompson family celebrated in the intimacy of Aurora Ranch. Emma and David, now walking with unsteady steps and babbling that was beginning to turn into words, were the center of attention. The sun was setting over the vineyards. Michael watched Sarah play with the children, his heart full of a happiness he never believed possible. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, approaching with David in her arms, while Emma entertained herself with her toys. "About how lucky I am," he replied, embracing them. "About how a simple act of helping someone in the rain changed my life forever." Sarah smiled, thinking about the long journey traveled, from a hopeless young woman, exploited and mistreated, to a strong woman, loving mother and happy wife. From living in constant fear to facing and defeating threats that would have paralyzed her former self. "You know," she said, looking at her children play, "sometimes I think about that rainy night when we met. I was so scared, so distrustful. I never imagined I would find not only security but true love." Michael kissed her forehead tenderly. "True love isn't what movies show, is it? It's not just passion and romantic moments. It's being together in storms, fighting side by side, building something neither of us could have created alone." "That's exactly it," she agreed. "And that's what I want our children to learn, that real love is demonstrated with actions, with respect, with honesty." As the sun finished hiding, behind the Napa Valley Mountains, the Thompson family represented a living testimony that even in the darkest circumstances, there's always the possibility of finding light. That the wounds of the past, though they leave scars, don't define who we can become. And that sometimes destiny weaves its threads in mysterious ways, uniting souls that were destined to save each other. Under the starry sky of Newport Beach, where it all began, Michael took Sarah's hand. "I promise to love you and our children every day of my life," he said with an emotional voice. "And I promise to be the strong woman you helped me discover I always was," she replied, her tears of happiness shining under the starlight. The twins, as if sensing the importance of the moment, stopped playing and looked at them with their curious little eyes. Emma stretched her little arms toward her parents, and David spoke his first clear word, "Mommy, Daddy," and in that perfect moment, under the infinite sky of the American coast, the Thompson family knew they had built something eternal, a love that transcended circumstances, a family forged not only by blood, but by the conscious choice to love and protect each other. Sarah gently caressed her children's heads, whispering a silent promise. They would grow up knowing they were unconditionally loved, that they came from a story of overcoming, and that they carried within themselves living proof that true love can conquer any adversity. And while the ocean waves broke gently on the distant beach, echoing like an eternal symphony, Sarah and Michael's story became legend, a legend that would be told through generations as proof that sometimes the most beautiful endings are born from the most painful beginnings. In the sacred silence of that starry night, with her children sleeping peacefully in her arms and the love of her life by her side, Sarah Wilson Thompson finally understood the true meaning of the word home. It wasn't a physical place, but a feeling, the absolute certainty of being loved, protected and valued exactly as she was. And Michael, watching his family under the immensity of the American sky, knew he had found his greatest treasure. Not in safes or investments, but in the smile of a woman who had transformed his life, in the laughter of two children who called him Daddy, and in the certainty that some miracles really happen when we least expect them. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Thompson Group had become one of America's most respected companies, not only for its financial success, but for its ethical practices and social programs. The Sarah Thompson Foundation, dedicated to supporting women in vulnerable situations, had helped hundreds of people rebuild their lives. Emma and David, now 6 years old, ran through the gardens of the Newport Beach mansion, their laughter echoing through the air. Emma had inherited her mother's determination and Michael's intelligence. David, calm as always, showed an early talent for music. Sarah, now a 32-year-old woman, radiated a confidence that came from within. Her past experiences had transformed into wisdom, and she used her story to inspire other women to find their own strength. Michael, at 39, had discovered that true success wasn't measured in numbers, but in the ability to make a difference in people's lives. His company continued growing, but never at the expense of his values or family. One day, while walking on Newport Beach with the twins, Sarah stopped and looked at the horizon. "You know what I think?" she said, taking Michael's hand. "What?" "That our story is still beginning, that the best chapters are still to come." Michael smiled, pulling her closer. "Then let's write them together, one day at a time, one love at a time." And under the same sky that had witnessed their first meeting, the Thompson family continued their journey, not as survivors of a painful past, but as protagonists of a future full of infinite possibilities. Because some love stories are so powerful, they echo through time, reminding us that no matter how dark the night, there will always be a dawn waiting to illuminate our path.